men find that so attractive. They don't want somebody who is going to combat them. Men combat every single day from the moment they wake up to the moment they come home. The last thing they want is more fighting. They want peace. And women, ladies, you are the best at bringing peace to men. Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us on Dating Today, a conversation about modern dating issues. My name is Brock Olsen. I have Maraa and Brittany joining me today. And today we're going to be talking about balancing feminine and masculine energy in dating and relationships.
Add it up.
So there's a topic that comes up to me quite a bit, which is when somebody starts dating, they are constantly trying to figure out if they should sit back just a little bit, let maybe the guy do a little bit more of the pursuing, and kind of let him step into a certain social gender role, if you will, of like stepping into that masculine. And the woman is usually wanting to know, like, should I also like reciprocate? How should I reciprocate? What is too much? What is too little? How do I make sure that they understand that I'm interested but not too interested? Because that's a tough balance. So what we're going to be talking about with Maraa and Brittany are going to be they're slightly varying perspectives on how they approach dating and their relationships. And I actually think they're going to have a lot of commonality here. And I just want to talk about how we're able to balance that better. I'm going to go ahead and start with Maraa. Thank you so much for joining today.
Thank you.
Whenever you are single and you are, out and you're hoping to maybe bump into someone special, like, what is your general approach? Do you kind of sit back and like let the guys like come up to you, offer you, buy you a drink? What type of signals are you sending? Like, how do you go about this?
I think that's something we've talked about a lot, especially in the Facebook dating group.
Oh, yeah.
So, and I've answered this a few times, but for me personally, I am like sending that like smile, that kind of like extra long gaze. I'm like, looking a little bit over my shoulder, like,
okay.
Hi, just letting people know, like whoever I'm like kind of
Sure.
interested in, like just making sure like they know I've caught their attention, vice versa.
So you're making sure they know.
Yes.
Okay.
So it's very subtly though.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not like I'm like, like, hey,
Sure.
I'm not like, get over here.
Okay. Do you think you're doing a good job in letting them know that you're interested? Do you think like maybe sometimes guys aren't quite picking up on the signs, or you pretty?
No,
You're pretty clear. Like there's no
it's like
misunderstanding.
Like, the guy's not like he, like when you're, this is a really good like analogy. Like when you're in a crowd and like someone's like waving at you and you're like. Like that's not happening.
There's no misunderstanding.
Like these guys are not looking like, is she talking to me? Like,
sure.
I mean, maybe one or two, but like
the clueless ones.
The clueless ones, yeah. But like generally, I'm for sure, being like, I'm making very intent, direct body language gestures to that person. So it is eye contact, and it's not just like a eye contact like this. It's very long.
Mm-hmm.
It is like, I want to make sure like I get a full like blink or two in.
Sure.
Like I'm like.
And the body language is open. It's
open.
To be received. Like, hey, I'm open to
Absolutely.
You coming to me. Do you approach?
Sometimes I do, actually. Yeah.
Tell us about that.
So
very, very curious about this.
I always tell people a little bit after some liquid courage is always easier.
Okay.
I think a lot of girls find it more difficult to approach a man in general unless they're like wildly drunk. I don't think that you have to be wildly drunk to like go out and do these things and approach somebody. But I do think sometimes like having a drink or two to like knock the edge off can be good. You don't have to. But yeah, a lot of times if I feel their energy, and again, you're looking for body cues, body language.
For sure.
You're looking for a smile back, a gaze back, a little like wink, or like, them kind of like talking to their friends, and they're kind of
so the guy winks to you.
Have
you been winked at?
Yeah,
Ooh,
I've had people wink or smile or just kind of like, like throw a hand up, or like sometimes like if I have a drink, I'll be like, like this. Like,
I acknowledge that you live.
I'll cheers. Yeah, like I'll cheers you like from like afar.
Right.
And and like sometimes it'll be like, they'll do it back, and then I'm
That's
like,
perfect. I like that.
Okay, and then that gives me the opening to say when I find the right timing is everything.
Of course.
To walk over or go over. I try not to do it as we talked, how does a guy approach a group of girls?
Right.
I try not to do that with
very little luck. That's how he does it.
With tons of his guy friends around, that's weird. That's awkward. The same as it would be for a guy approaching a group of girls with her girlfriends.
Sure.
Because there's always that one girl that's like, no. You guys gotta be like, timing is everything. So when his friends go to grab a drink at the bar,
sure.
Or you see him like get up to go do something, go to the bar himself, maybe you time it to go to the bar at the same time that he's there.
Sure.
And that's what I kind of look for, is those like timing cues as well.
You know what's so funny is like the guys that are watching this right now are like, if I ever had a girl come up to me, like, it's game over. Like, it would be so nice to not have to either always initiate, always be facing the very likely scenario of being rejected, publicly humiliated.
Yeah.
I would bet money that 9 times out of 10, if a woman were to approach a guy, she would succeed.
I would say that too.
So it's surprising that it requires so much courage, though.
Yeah, I'm a person who is very comfortable with myself and comfortable in talking in social settings. I think that's
one thing I love about you.
Thank you. I think that's something that everybody has to be, able to do. If you're the wallflower, if you're the introvert, this is going to be much harder for that person to approach somebody. But if you can talk to anyone, like people, the expression, I've never met a stranger. If you have that kind of personality, you're going to succeed almost every single time. And for me, I'm like, who cares if you fail?
Sure.
Who cares if they're like, I'm not interested, or I'm married, whatever. Some people like a challenge, it is what it is. But in my opinion, like, I'm just a stronger person in that personality sense. Like, I go after what I want.
Sure.
If I see something, I'm going to go get it.
So
that's how I feel.
Would you say it's that you don't do that just in dating? That's a lifestyle. That's a mentality that you have about most things.
Yeah.
Like, I know you I say recently bought a house about a year ago. You bought a house. You've done a lot of the remodeling yourself. Like, you're a go-getter. I love that. That's so cool. Like, you make things happen. So the way you approach life is kind of how you approach dating. Like, there is no true distinguishing factor.
Yeah, I think the more you get told no, which guys should be really good at this because they get told no so much. Rejection's almost like they should be like numb to rejection. I think women are not quite as numb to rejection because they're almost always used to getting a yes. So I think, like, in a male perspective, which I'm not a male, so I'm just giving my perspective on what I think it would be. I think, like, they're kind of numb to that. And for me, I do go after what I want, and I don't like to be told no. And it's difficult when I get told no. I do not like to fail. I think a lot of women, type A personalities are like that. And I think, in general, a lot of people just don't like to be told no. And for me, I've always been taught, like, if there's a will, there's a way. And if you want something, you have to work to get it.
For sure.
For me, I'm like, you just have to learn how to figure that out. If someone's like, you can't do that. An example, you said, I bought a house, and the first thing I want to do is take out a major wall, load bearing. Someone told me, can't do it. You're not going to do it. It's not going to happen. You can't do it this way. You can't do it the way you want. And I'm like, that's not true. And the next thing I did is I pulled up a web browser and I researched every single way that you could do it, how to do it, who I needed to contact, how I needed to do it, etc. And now it's done. Now you can't tell there was ever a wall there.
Right.
And that's how I definitely live my life.
Love the floor plan, by the way. It's beautiful.
Thank you. But that's how I live my life, is I just generally don't accept no for an answer. Or
excuses. I've noticed that you don't accept excuses for, like, really anything.
And I don't. And I think there's a quote that Kris Jenner has always said, which I have heard it recently, and I thought, that's just such a good quote. And, she's always told her children, when someone tells you no, you're talking to the wrong person. So, it's like, don't accept no for an answer.
I can dig that.
And so just because someone tells you no, well, they're not the right person. Find someone that's going to tell you yes.
I love it. I love it. Nice. No, that was actually, that was beautiful. I like that. Well, Brittany, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
So you and we've had some conversations. You've told me a little bit about the way that you view dating, the way you approach dating, relationships, kind of how you approach life as well. I've noticed with your situation, you approach life and dating kind of differently. Like you're very, like Maraa, very go-getting. Like you make it happen, no excuses. But not so much in dating. You're a little bit more. The word reserved is not what I mean, but you definitely want the man to make those first moves for sure.
Yeah, I was soaking this up. Like, how inspiring. I love all of that. And I actually identify, I think, with a number of things that you said. But as Brock mentioned, there are certain things, sorry about that. There are certain things that I guess not reserved would be the word, but more of observing.
There we go.
And so I feel like I'm not opposed to, maybe going up to someone, but I feel like you hit the nail on the head when you said timing is everything. And, we'll talk about this a little bit later, I think. But when I'm thinking about feminine and masculine energies, I think there's a certain intuition that I guess my philosophy is to kind of give that time to, if you're in like a social setting, you're out somewhere, to sort of see what, how people read the room.
Sure.
And kind of give it time to percolate before necessarily approaching someone.
Sure.
So.
Well, as a kid, how were you shown to, like, as a woman, as a girl, what were you told growing up? Like, what was the raising? Like, were you told, let the guy make the first move, he should be pursuing you? Like, what was taught to you as a kid? Because I often find that the way that the influences growing up heavily dictate the way that we approach dating. Like, we very rarely, like, differentiate from that. So what was the upbringing without getting too into?
Yeah,
what was your childhood
I actually
like?
might be an outlier.
And don't worry, this question's coming tomorrow too.
Exactly. No, maybe I'm an outlier on that. In fact, my parents met when my dad came down from New York, visited the small town where I'm from, about an hour from here.
Roughly what year is this, by the way?
Oh, yeah.
Because I think this is important.
Well, I think you'll be surprised when you hear how the story turns out.
Okay.
So maybe not. But this was early 80s, 1981.
Okay.
And so when he came down, they met, and my mom actually on Valentine's Day sent him a rose. He called to thank her for it.
Shoot your shot, ladies.
Oh my gosh, that's so cute.
I think that's almost every female in my family. So maybe I'm an outlier like that.
Okay.
So you're
There's a lot of
opposite.
love at first sight type stuff.
Oh,
but
man.
I have I'm not going to say it's like big fat Greek wedding, but there's there's a lot of people, and there's a lot of just, rowdiness in my family. It's all fun, but I think maybe that made me like the quiet one.
Yeah,
So,
like you're the observer. So you
Yeah.
kind of sit back and just like take it all in, absorb everything before you kind of like move.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm kind of like that too with my family, just because they're a little loud.
They
And,
can
like,
be a little loud.
they're like
Exactly.
they just like no. I'm a loud person too. Like my friends know, like volume level. There's no volume level for me.
I gotcha.
But yeah, it's kind of like that.
So, Brittany, you've been married before. How did you meet your ex? How did like, did you shoot your shot? He shoot his shot? Did you sit back? Did you pursue? Like, how was that balance done?
My friends shot my shot.
Oh, okay. Shot the shot. But that's
feel
still
like
you shoot.
wingman.
Wait, did you
Yeah.
ask them to do it, or did they just do it on your behalf without you knowing?
Oh no, they did it on my behalf with me knowing. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So
Okay.
it's
So-
Good
that's
friends.
actually still
Yeah.
you shooting your shot.
Yeah.
Okay.
It wasn't bad.
Okay.
So I think that that was kind of interesting, but again, it's like I feel like, and maybe too heavily, I don't claim to know the answers by any means, but I feel like there is always like an understanding that there's a mutual like connection there. Anytime I've had a romantic scenario, it's
Yeah.
kind of like known that you're both on the same page.
Sure.
So I'm not as courageous as
Sure.
you, where there's like,
Maybe.
as far as I'm interpreting it, like an unknown variable where
Yeah.
like I like them, but I don't know that they like me.
Sure.
I don't
Okay,
think that's
yeah.
ever happened.
That's what you're saying.
It's always kind of like, okay, I think there's a mutual understanding here. And so that creates, in my mind, like a safe space.
Ah,
Okay.
gotcha.
So,
Okay.
yeah.
I love that. So in that kind of setting, is that something that you think, or has taken like time to develop that? Because to me, that what I understood was that you liking this person in that person potentially, or that person liking you back. There wasn't necessarily a question in it, so that means it kind of developed like over maybe a couple of weeks or a month, or like there's a timeline to it, versus like where mine's a bit more instant, like the day of, like where I'm like, hi, let's talk.
No, these were all day of as well.
Okay.
Yeah, I would say more like not necessarily instant connection, but like over, half hour or something like that. Like,
I mean,
That's instant to me.
yeah,
Yeah,
I mean,
that's pretty instant.
That seems pretty instant.
Yeah.
Okay.
fairly instant.
And you said that, like, your friends are kind of help to create that safe space too, in those type of settings. Maybe not always, but like sometimes. And so is it kind of like you're in a friend group setting where someone else is there, or you're like maybe like at a party or something, and you're like, oh, you're like your friend, you're like, hey, like, that's kind of cute, and it's like they're like, I'll get some feelers, like I'll be right back. Is it kind of like, all right, let's see, like let's suss it out a little bit and see like what does he think, like see if we can figure that out.
Yeah, I think this is where especially like the feminine energy can be very interesting, especially, I think we do, even with friends, like we attract friends that are
For
like
sure.
and different than us. And so I feel like I have a lot of like very feminine, intuitive friends.
Yeah.
And so then we're all kind of like dialing in and vibing about
Yeah.
like what's happening here. It's like a language that doesn't require words,
Oh, yeah.
And
yeah.
so I think your friends know like, oh, she's kind of into him. So they're like your wing woman,
For sure.
Yes.
So,
Sure.
yeah.
Love
Nice.
being a wing woman.
Yeah, and they know you, so
Like
they
a
know
wing woman
I'm
to
not going to
women
shoot my
and my
shot.
women friends. Yes.
So they
Okay,
will.
so let me ask this then. So once you've made the connection, maybe you've been dating for a while, and maybe you've got an exclusive. Maraa, you being the go-getter, do you continue being that way in the relationship, or have you noticed that you step a little bit more into the feminine at that point once things are a little bit more secured in the connection and the reciprocation? Do you just continue the way that you're going, or how
I
do
think
you
there's
usually
a bit
roll?
of a pace change a little bit.
Okay.
And it really depends on the person and the interaction that I have with each person.
Sure.
So it's
Sure.
hard to say like every single time it's like this, but a lot of times I am kind of the initiator. I don't mind to be that anymore. And the more that I have met and talked to men in all different perspectives, whether I'm interested in dating them or even just in a friend's situation, like with our friend group or other friend groups, I just ask them, I just pose questions, and I'm always like, how do you feel about this? How do you feel about a woman doing these things or like taking on these roles? And I would say almost like 90% of men are like, we love it.
Yes.
We love when a woman takes charge.
Yes. That is actually what Carlos and I were talking about a month ago when we were doing a recording, was mutual reciprocation. And after a couple of weeks or months, I should say a few months, if a guy is continuing to invest, continuing to send those good morning texts, continuing initiating dates, and there's very little reciprocation, like we're not getting any like, how's your day messages, and we're not being asked like, hey, this thing's going on in town, I'd like for us to go, and you offer to maybe pick up the tab or buy tickets to something because you want us to be together. After a while, like that gets very, very frustrating, and guys will slowly back off. So that mutual reciprocation, that mutual investment is so important. So
I completely agree.
Yeah.
And I think like for me, it's important to have a little bit of both. Like I think that part of this, the topic is femininity and masculinity, and knowing how to balance that together, and knowing when it's okay to say, hey, I'm planning a date night tonight, whatever, this is what we're going to do, or this is what I want to do, and get some feedback, or, say, I really want to go on a date with you. Can you plan something? I think like part of that is communication, and like you said, like, guys do want to be in charge to some, like they want to feel wanted. They want to feel like they are, capable of doing things like, and I think women now, especially since there's so much feminism in the world today, which is great, but I think that takes away from men sometimes in the role of women making them feel capable.
Sure.
And I even struggle to say making a man feel capable, because here's the thing, men are capable, women are capable. It's just whether or not they choose to do certain things at certain times. And I don't believe personally that I need to create a situation for a man to do these things. I actually just expect you to do them. And I feel like I shouldn't have to ask for a man to do that, or to take me on a date.
To create opportunities to be together, to plan things.
I'm like, just do it. I'm like, if you're looking at your calendar and you say, oh, I'm open from this time to this time.
Sure.
Well, you already know my work schedule probably. If we're this for a long time, you know my work schedule.
Right.
Say, hey, babe, we're going to go do this. Or like, I want to take you here. Like, nothing lights me up more than a guy who I'm dating saying that I planned something for us. Like, that, I feel like the Grinch, like the day that his heart grew bigger, like it just grew 3 times, like right then. And every time you do that, it just keeps growing. I'm like, it's going to burst out of my body at some point if you keep doing those things. And at the same time, I think like it's important for me to, do little things. And part of that is, I think complimenting men and like giving them verbal affirmations.
For sure.
And letting them know, like, hey, I think you're attractive. I think you look really good today. Your haircut looks great. Like, let them know, like, I appreciate you taking care of yourself because it makes me more attracted to you. Thanks for taking time to plan this date. That is just, it's just amazing. And I just love that. I love that you enjoy doing those things for me. And it makes me feel really good.
Yeah, verbalizing your appreciation is so valuable to a guy. It really is. It is for women as well, but I think that on a day-to-day basis, men are told so not frequently. I made a joke. I said that a guy will write a compliment for 8 months.
Yeah.
Because he just doesn't receive them. So yeah, just saying like, what you've just done, what you planned, this date meant a lot. Like, I think that goes a really, really, really long way. Let's talk a little bit about those roles. So once we're actually in that relationship and things are going really well, what is, Brittany, something that that you can do to allow yourself to step into your feminine and allow the guy to step into his masculine? I'm going to ask this backwards too. What allows you to step into your masculine and him into his feminine? Because that's something that a lot of people do not talk about, because those energies are not owned by genders. They are fluid. Men can step into feminine roles. Don't tell me, guys, that you don't like laying on your lady and her rubbing your head. Don't tell me you don't, because don't tell me you don't. So what are some things that you have found that allow those opportunities?
I think this is really interesting. As you were speaking, Maraa, I just kept thinking, to me, it starts with balancing the masculine and feminine inside of yourself, or not even balancing it, just kind of working with that flow. And that's what, I'm not an expert on this topic, but I love to listen to like John Gray and these different people who are experts.
For sure.
And I find it fascinating, especially with a long history in health and fitness and those types of things, and just kind of noticing how, exercise, what you eat, these different things, they do affect our hormones, and so do the people that we're around.
Oh, yeah.
And so this has been super fascinating to me, not to get off on too much of a tangent.
No, you're good.
But kind of growing up with, like, on a farm, my dad, he recently passed away from prostate cancer, but I just say that to say that he, we went through testosterone testing and things like that. And as a result of like all the farm work and being outside, working constantly, his testosterone, even on his deathbed, was like 700. That's almost unheard of.
Yeah.
My grandpa also had prostate cancer about 20 years ago. His was 1,200.
Wow.
And so, I think that, and actually mine is quite high from,
I feel like mine is too.
Yeah. About 300 or so. And last time I had it tested. And so I don't want to reduce people to their hormones, but I do think that when we talk about tearing walls down and, having some drive and things like that, that is part of this story. And I think it's just important to be mindful of, the kind of influences that were around, and then just kind of noting things that I've learned from John Gray that this part just blew my mind. As far as your question goes, when we are treated in a way that creates a safe space for us, especially as women, it literally produces estrogen, and it creates this cycle that I have found is so true.
Because this is biology.
It is. Biochemistry, and we're just, again, not to reduce us to our hormones, but I think if if you start noticing yourself, this is my yoga instructor side coming
Sure.
out, but I mean, if you notice your body, I think in these moments when you're around your girlfriends, like how are you feeling in those moments if you're female, or your guy friends if you're male? Literally, men get a testosterone boost when they're around other men.
For sure.
And they also get a testosterone boost, when they're complimented by women. And so there are just these different things that I think for males and females, when we do step into those more traditional roles, it creates this positive catalyst, typically, I would say, for what most people would say they would want in a relationship.
You took the words right out of my mouth. Continue. I'm loving it. Continue.
I know.
Yes.
I love this.
Yep.
I think that this part of it, is not heard that much anymore. But it's just, if you really start to notice, who are the people that make me feel good? Who are the people that make me feel safe? What about those experiences
Sure.
made me feel that
Sure.
way? Then you begin to notice your masculinity and femininity, maybe in a new light.
That's a really great perspective, honestly. And I never really, I have, but I haven't really put it into that type of thought and realizing like hormones do play such a big
For sure.
role. I know that they do, but you kind of like push that to the wayside when you're trying to take into these, characteristics and, balance out, this dating, like where is your place? And like you said, creating a safe space, or when someone allows you to have a safe space, you're more open. You're
sure.
like more calm. You're more like, accepting and encouraging, and you do change a little bit. And surely there has to be, as you said, it's a biochemistry thing that's occurring in your body. I think that's just amazing. I think science is so cool.
And I think it's just, for me, and not to just maybe speak too far ahead. I don't know if we're going to cover this later on, but I just think back even to like my college days when I was talk about type A. I don't even remember it. Not because I was partying, because I was like working 6 jobs and on the dean's list and doing all these things. And just so intense. And that's definitely,
sure.
at that point, I was kind of always into bodybuilding and fitness. So I was always having these hormones tested. And so it was kind of interesting to see my testosterone was a lot higher at that point in time. And I did have just all of this drive. But I think, on my own, I'm not necessarily going to say it's a negative side, but it was a different side of me that I think I was more in a masculine energy.
Sure.
Kind of letting that just ride, and in the boss babe mindset and all of that stuff at that point in time.
And that's actually like what I was really wanting to like dive into, was the boss babe mentality, where to be a boss babe, you have to step into your masculine. You've got to do. That's not a feminine mentality at all. So balancing the boss babe with like the potential housewife, the wife individual, like how are we doing? How difficult must that be to balance those two things?
This is what I'm really interested in. And, I found it, I don't know if you even know this about me, Brock, but I used to be editor-in-chief of a magazine here in Chattanooga called Feminology. And it was all about boss babes. And so I interviewed all the boss babes in Chattanooga.
You missed one.
We didn't know
She
each
was
other
hiding.
then. I'm sorry. But, I found it so interesting that no matter how successful these women were, CEOs and everything, all types of executives, they would always say it was their family that they were most proud of.
Sure.
Their marriage and their kids. And that just made an impression on me that I'll never forget. There was never one exception to that rule.
Wow.
And, tons of people that I interviewed. And so that really stood out to me. And I think that was part of like unpacking. I was just at the time, just to be really candid and transparent, I'm pretty much an open book.
Sure.
Feeling like, okay, I did the marriage thing, but no kids. And, just really want to be dedicated to my career. And now I know, because I've explored and unpacked this so much and, read about this stuff all the time, that actually feeds our testosterone. And so we're really, if you've heard of like Dr. Gary Chapman and like the love tank idea and that type of thing, in my mind, you have kind of like a testosterone and estrogen tank as well.
Yep.
And so I think as women, we can almost like run on fumes when we're just exclusively working.
We can.
And nothing wrong with being independent and tearing your own walls down and all this good stuff. I've done that as well. But I think it's just important to kind of recognize when we're tired, when
sure.
having some help might be refreshing
Listening
and
to our bodies.
But it gets difficult when you're such a boss babe to ask for help, to step into that almost feminine part of you, and like, how do you do that after you've gone a whole week or a couple months and you're in such a highly competitive, maybe corporate or sales situation every day, competing with women and men, stepping back into that? It's got to be like the mental whiplash, the almost confusion in a way. And I think that we see that, and this is not to take away from any of the progress we've made with equality and feminism today, but that seems to be why there's so much friction today between men and women, is that it's so difficult to differentiate boss babe mentality, which I'm all for if that's what is like making you happy. If that's also how you're supporting yourself, fucking do it. Like, I'm all for that. But being able to step into the feminine, so the guy finds that attractive. Guys find femininity attractive. It's beautiful. Don't distinguish that from yourself. Like, keep that at all costs. I just find that so difficult. You ladies do this so well, though.
I think it's really difficult personally for me too. And I think there's some people who just naturally are a more feminine embodiment. I would say I feel like you're so feminine in a really pretty way.
Oh,
I think
you.
Diana is a really feminine person, in a really pretty way.
Yep.
You just see that. And for me, when I see myself, and this is just a self-reflection, I see very rigid, hardcore texture to myself.
Okay.
And from the outside, people probably wouldn't say that. But that's what I see, that's what I feel. And so my perception is very askew to what femininity versus masculinity is with myself.
Sure.
Because sure, I can get dolled up and I can look pretty, but at the end of the day, I'm like, I still have my chipped nails, and I still have really frizzy hair, or I kind of have this like masculine appearance to myself sometimes. That's how I feel. And
I don't agree with the masculine appearance.
I know.
I mean, there's a difference in
difficult.
tomboy and masculine. There's a difference in that. Like, hey, I like to garden. That's that's great. That's fine. I like doing a little bit of remodeling at the house. That's great.
Yeah.
But
I find that hard. And the other part is that I come across very aggressive sometimes. Like, I'm very bold. I'm not a person that just like doesn't speak their mind.
Right.
I do it.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of times what men struggle with is a personality like mine. Is that someone who is that boss babe mentality, which, anybody can be a boss babe. Anybody can, be a go-getter, be a type A if that's what they want to do. I think like the hard part for men to accept is a woman who is type A, who is a go-getter, who literally is like not like will mow you down if you're in her way to get what she wants.
Sure. And
it has nothing to do with him. It's just the fact that like she has this vision just like you do, just as a man. Like you have your vision, you have these goals set, you want to achieve these things. And like in the dating world, I'm not trying to let a relationship slow me down. Even though like a relationship is nice,
sure,
it's sometimes that slows me down. And a lot of times men have said to me or said to my friends, I think she's a wonderful person. I think she's great. I think she's beautiful. Like all of these great compliments, but the but
she would mow me down to get to what she needs.
Yeah, the but is always she's so she's a little aggressive. She's a little like rough around the edges. She's she's a little like it's almost like saying like I'm too much to handle for them, because they don't know how to balance the fact that I will go to bat for myself or for anyone else. Like we can butt heads and have disagreements or not see eye to eye.
Sure.
And I think like that's the issue sometimes, is that men, not so much women, don't know how to balance to that part. Like they don't know how to approach a woman like that. And I think like that's where they need to step into femininity sometimes and be a little bit softer and say, okay, well if that's how she is, like that's just how she is. Accept her for how she is.
But would a woman find that attractive? And I'll make an example here. If a guy went up to you and said, I have an amazing shoe collection at my house. You want to come home with me? You'd probably be like, what? That's not attractive. Why would I find that attractive? But that's a feminine thing. If he, though, said, like, I've got a Lamborghini from my work and stuff, you'd probably find that more attractive than a shoe collection.
I find neither attractive personally.
I got a lifted truck. Whatever.
It could be. He's like,
so
replace
so
this
you
with
want
that.
the man to step into his feminine nature initially or early on, but women don't find that attractive. They just often don't. A woman that can mow over a guy doesn't respect the guy, and that's not attractive.
I really want to interject on this note.
Go ahead.
At some point. It doesn't have to be now.
No, go ahead.
Go for it.
But while we're on this topic, I'm like, I get the eye roll emoji now because I have to talk about
I didn't mean
dancing.
to.
No, I'm just kidding. I have to talk about dancing. I don't know if you know, but I absolutely love ballroom dancing. Still not that good after several years, but it's taught me so many life lessons. It's just amazing. And I just keep thinking about dancing as you're speaking because I think, in talking with a number of dance instructors, they all say when women begin dancing, almost all want to lead. Mm-hmm. And so I guess where I would just, maybe push back and just kind of challenge your thinking, to be honest, is in the go-getter idea. Because something that I've even, just learned over the years, I'm a little older than you, is just men really, they have their own intuition. I continue to realize this the older I get. And
who would have thought?
I know. Men think differently than us. They have ideas.
Really?
We were not taught that in school.
Definitely
seriously.
not.
This is a disservice, I think, to men. And the more I kind of relax into this idea, I realize, oh my goodness, these guys, even guy friends and everything, guys at work, they have insight to offer that I guess when we're in that mode, and I've definitely walked that path before, so I totally empathize with that. But I think when we're in that mode as women, we're on a mission, that's literally, back to the biochemistry, that is testosterone, 100%. It's that A to B mindset is not, I don't feel like that's really in the feminine energy. Yeah. Because feminine energy tends to be more receptive and more just relaxed. And so that's what ballroom
100%.
Energy, or ballroom dancing has taught me about that energy, is I actually have a friend from ballroom that when I was starting out and I was trying to lead and strong arm the men, he would say, we can dance or we can wrestle. And that's what, as you're talking, I'm
always
thinking
me trying to wrestle over here.
You can dance or you can wrestle. And dancing, especially being led and just kind of being able to be like the flower that blooms, it's way more fun, ladies. I don't claim to be perfect at it, but it is something that you can experience, and you'll find it's in your nature, in my opinion, a lot more than trying to lead and plan.
I think it's something that I for sure have been working on, is to be, softer. I think it's so, I'm always taken aback when someone's like, she's so harsh, and I'm like, why do they think that? I'm like, what have I done? I'm always so nice, and I'm giving, and I'm all these things that anyone could say. And then I'm like, why is a guy saying that about me? But they're always showering me in great compliments, but they're like, you're still so harsh. I'm like, why would they feel that way? So I do try to step back and realize where I can be softer. And sometimes, it is toning down conversations and timing and knowing how aggressive to go into a topic or whatever, and when is the right place. And I think the other part for me is, inside a relationship, when I feel like it is a safe place, I do tend to step back and I do tend to let a man lead. And I look for that. I look for a guy to lead a little bit stronger, than just a hair stronger, like 3 hairs stronger than me. Not many, but a little. But I think that's the part that I, on a different level, fight. And it may be more on a mental level that I fight that, because I think a lot of people would relate, you get bored. I get bored really easy with guys, and because I'm not mentally stimulated with them either. And so, I want to talk about things. I want to go really, I want to deep dive sometimes. And it's
deep dive and real fast.
Not necessarily
because,
really
you're
fast,
intense. You want to know, hey, once you have that connection, and everyone's experienced this, you do that first phone call and it's for 4 hours. You're like, why have we just talked for 4 hours and we've not even met yet? I know what you're talking about.
Yeah,
that's natural.
And I've done that, but I try not to do that. I've taken a lot of your advice too. I try to tone it down, maybe 30 minutes, 45. But, I try not to do that. And I try to say, like, if we're going to go on a date, like, I'm not going to have a 30, 40-minute conversation with you before we meet. Like, I'll have a 10 or 15-minute conversation with you. All of the things I want to deep dive on or that we can have in this phone call, we can do it in person.
Yeah,
and that's
100%.
That's what I want to look forward to with that person. And if we get to that point, sometimes we don't get to that point.
So would you say that, Maraa, maybe the way that you approach dating and relationships has to do with perhaps men letting you down in the past, and so you feel to take care of yourself, you have to step into their role so you can't be hurt again, and then by doing so, you naturally filter weak men.
Woof.
I think that's
down.
But here's the thing: is a lot of people do that,
Sorry.
especially if they've been hurt several times or severely, like gaslit to. And real quick, gaslighting is not what most people think. It's actually a very, very severe altering of somebody else's perception of reality. Like they don't even know what to think anymore. But like something like that, you can't even trust people. So you have to step into this position where you have to defend yourself now at almost all costs, your emotions especially. But you have to do this, and then like you're naturally vetting people, vetting men. And if they are weaker than the masculinity that you're putting out, they have disqualified themselves. Yep. Even if they are really, like, hey, they could be really good for you. But because you're coming on, and this is a lot of women, this isn't just Maraa. I see this a lot with a lot of clients.
She's strong. Come
on really strong, aggressive, subconsciously vetting and seeing if they are going to push back. This is what we call self-sabotaging behavior because we're afraid to be hurt again.
It's true.
I totally get that.
And I would say yes to almost every single thing that you said, because what we've looked at for me personally is that I have been hurt a lot, and that is what I would say it's a storyline for me since childhood. So
I got you.
This is something that I have worked, with therapy with. I have really done a lot of work on myself for that. It is still something that I struggle with in dating a lot, and trying to balance that and not let someone. I think what I try to do now is I try not to put so much emphasis on people and just let them show me who they are in their own time. I do sometimes set a little bit of a timeline up for what my expectations are, but I try not to set too many expectations because I feel like setting too many expectations is also an easy way to create failure in a self-sabotaging way. And I think, part of that for me, again, is I don't want to get hurt. So it's like, here's a wall. And every time I let someone chip away at that wall, my expectation is that they're actually going to hurt me. And so, and my mindset is like easily like.
It's panic.
It's like waiting. It's just, I'm no longer enjoying it. I'm just waiting for it to happen.
Waiting to be disappointed, let down, hurt. Yeah.
So then when it happens, then you're like, well, guess what? I'm going to put up another wall,
I knew they would disappoint me. I knew they were going to do this.
Yeah. So, and you and I have talked about, one recently, and that one, I think in that moment I said, it really makes me super nervous to discuss anything with that person or to like get close to that person because I'm feeling, and that's how I'm starting to like notice like these changes, bodily changes, I guess. Like, I'm like, okay, my body feels anxious. I feel anxious about this. Why am I feeling anxious? And being present with those feelings. And I think that helps because, and everybody should do that. I think everybody should approach a situation like that is how are you feeling mentally? Or like, what's the stability there?
Absolutely.
Gut check. Yeah.
Yeah, a good check there. Yeah. And, for me, like I said, like I feel like I stepped back in my femininity or into my femininity in that situation because I didn't allow myself to say this is, in my mind, like set these expectations and say this is what I want and like go after this person so hard. I just kind of like I kind of let them lead a little bit. I kind of just let them say what they say, and I kind of played into it a little bit, but I didn't play enough that I got super hurt. I was able to walk away from that one in a way a little bit better
Mm-hmm.
after having some good advice and, you know, discussing a few things privately with friends
Sure.
about how I was feeling.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
Yeah, no, that's completely understandable, and I think that as we're considering the balance of masculine and feminine energy, the one thing that we need to understand more than anything is that when it's difficult for us to naturally step into, as women, into our feminine, that it is likely because of past trauma. It is likely because they feel that they need to defend themselves, that they've been let down by men in the past. So it's something that they definitely need to, like Maraa said, she went to some therapy and she's done a lot of personal work. I love that. I highly promote everybody that is struggling with stepping into their feminine nature and their feminine energy to definitely do that. Do that work. You'll thank yourself later. And men find that so attractive. They don't want somebody who is going to combat them. Men combat every single day from the moment they wake up to the moment they come home. The last thing they want is more fighting. They want peace. And women, ladies, you are the best at bringing peace to men. Another man can't do that. It's just impossible. Your nurturing nature is a gift, and for you to struggle to give that to a guy is just doing yourself a disservice. So I really promote all women to really, really do the work, make sure that they are able to open themselves up like that. Brittany, did you have any other things that you wanted to talk about this?
I need like 3 more episodes.
You need 3 more
to
episodes?
unpack what you
I'd
just
love
said.
I'd love to
It's-
have you back on again. We can talk some more about this. I think
This
this was
was-
really good.
Thank you. This was so fascinating.
Yeah.
And I mean, everything you just said, I also just want to say, I hope it's okay for me to say this,
Yeah.
but you being so vulnerable just now, I felt like that was super feminine.
Yeah,
And
it
listening
was.
to your
It was beautiful. It really
intuition,
was.
I mean, I'm
Mhm.
super proud of you on that. And that's
Mhm.
doing the hard work and like noticing those things. You really do. It's like, you remind me of me in just the way you were talking like 5 years ago, 10 years ago,
Mhm.
when, you know, we can quickly, especially when we don't want to deal with something, label it.
Oh, yeah.
Boredom, that was my word. You know, I'm like, I'm bored, because it was easy.
Mhm.
And because in a way, I mean, we were talking earlier about biochemistry, you know, our neurology is part of this too. And
Mhm.
literally, I just appreciate how you talked about your childhood and everything, because we all have patterns. We can have the most perfect parents in the world, but no parent is perfect. And it's like, I've been thinking about this actually a lot with my dog, you know, but it's like, you don't know how they're internalizing it. All I can
We're
do.
all dog parents here.
Yeah, we are. And so it's like, as I train my little puppy as she's growing up, it's like, you know, it's my responsibility to make sure she doesn't get hit by a car.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
if I have to, you know, yell at her a little louder than I really wanted to keep her from doing that, and she is scared or something in the moment, it's like, you know, I did the best I could. And I think that we have to have that grace, but then not take all of, you know, however our neurology was programmed
Mhm.
into our relationships. Because
Yeah.
I do think, to Brock's point, I thought of this earlier when you were talking, but I definitely used to be one of those girls like in college that I felt like, you know, the whole like, I'm not gonna make him a sandwich kind of thing. Like, no, I got better things
I will
to
make
do.
you a sandwich this big
I'm
all
gonna
day.
make my business, you know, I'll never make you a sandwich. But I mean,
Right.
now I look at that as like, if it's really somebody you love and care about,
Yeah.
and they're like speaking life
Mhm.
into you, and you know, you have a great relationship, like, why would you not want to do whatever
Mhm.
would make that person
For
happy?
sure.
Especially
Yeah.
they're making you happy, you're
Mhm.
making them happy, and you just stay in this like positive flow, which is the rising tide that lifts all boats. And
Yep.
I think other people see it, and it's just, you know, on and on with the positivity.
And
So.
to what you said, you just kind of sprung a little thought for me, is based on that too. I feel like, you know, you said like, I'm not gonna make him a sandwich, but which is like fine, but like maybe you are a person who like likes to write notes or likes to write cards or
Mhm.
things like that. And I think in this general topic, I think finding out your love language
Mhm.
is also very important in knowing how you receive and reciprocate
For sure.
this type of
For
energy.
sure. For sure.
Because sometimes that's how you kind of step for
Mhm.
men too into that femininity role, by being able to give compliments in a constructive way, being able to, dote on your girl, in a way that she feels and is receiving that, not, with like love and with
100%,
care. So
100%.
I think that would be something to kind of put out there for guys and girls too.
I love it. Well, I think that was a really really good and powerful conversation. I'd like to welcome you back again in the future.
So
I think I think people would love to hear more of your thoughts. Thank you again so much for jumping on today on Dating Today. I think that's pretty much a wrap, right?
Yeah.
All right, guys. Thank you so much.
Thank
We'll
you.
see you
Thank
guys
you.
next time. Bye.
Add it up.